Great.
You're all set.
Okay. Great. Thanks so much. Good evening, everyone. Today is Tuesday, July 25th. My name is Susie Robinson, and I will call to order this meeting of the Community and Economic Development Committee of the Bridgewater Town Council. I note that we have a quorum. I'm joined tonight by District 3 Councilor Fred Chase and Councilor at Large Brad McKinnon. And then also we have a special guest with us, Community and Economic Development Director Bob Ruley. Nice to see everyone tonight.
You.
All right. First, I would like to read the COVID disclosure statement. So pursuant to Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2020, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, and the March 31st, 2025 extension granted by Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022. This meeting for the town of Bridgewater will be fully remote and accessible to the public through remote participation to the greatest extent possible. No in-person attendance is permitted. Citizens who wish to tune in to the meeting may do so via Zoom. All right. With that, just for the call to order, oh wait, hang on one second. I want to make sure I'm not skipping a step here. Do we have we wouldn't have any minutes to approve, correct? Since we are sort of a newly reformed committee.
You wouldn't be able to approve any minutes because 2 years weren't on the committee prior.
Oh, okay, that's what I figured.
So you're all set.
Okay, great. Next item is public comment. It does not appear we have anyone from the public. So with that, I will get down to our next item, which is new business. So our topic today, discussion with Robert Ruley on marketing and community outreach for downtown revitalization initiative. So that is our only item, and I don't believe we have any items to actually take action upon. This is really more so for a discussion. I thought this time tonight we can understand how recent efforts have been received from the community, with whom the Community and Economic Development team has met with so far, any feedback of note, and then also check in on the events and activities that are coming up as well. I know that we've got a big community workshop coming up in September, but I know that there's also steps in between to get there. And then finally, I thought it would just be a good time to check in and see where this committee can be helpful for upcoming events and addressing citizen inquiries. So that is kind of what's on my mind. Certainly open it up for any other thoughts.
Well, I think you've certainly covered a lot of our shared interests and needs at this point, Susie. I would agree with you that to the extent that we can furnish any additional support for the initiative, it would be incumbent on us to do that. And I think it will be well received by citizens who might still have questions or concerns about the nature of this activity. So, well, we'll see what thoughts are out there and what Bob has to contribute, and we'll go from there.
Bob doesn't have anything. I mean, we've been doing nothing.
Just
Fair
a couple
enough.
things. Yeah, Bob, I've been enjoying it, obviously following you on social media and seeing updates that are going on, hearing from the town manager, hearing from yourself. You all have been very busy. So looking forward to hearing, how is it going?
It's going. I mean, I think that we've got a really good team assembled. The community outreach is really a priority for us right now. You'll see rack cards and posters around town. There's a mailer with a save the date that will be going out, and should be arriving in people's mailbox next week to all the residents in Bridgewater. Michael and I are doing a community, we call them conversations now, not presentations. We're doing one on August 14th at 6:30 at the library. There's some upcoming small business events that are going to happen at Black Cat Brewery and then also at one of the local banks. So, I mean, I'm excited to move things forward. We had a really interesting meeting at the senior center a couple weeks ago. Emily didn't anticipate very good attendance, and we had to get more chairs, and we changed up what the presentation that we have been doing. I mean, we made it more Q&A, trying to understand where people are from, but I found the comments to be very constructive, people to be very interested. There's still a lot of education that has to happen. You know, we posed the question, what does affordable housing mean to someone? And the answer was apartments. So, and we know there's a lot of work that we need to do, but I thought that all in all, the participants were respectful, receptive. It was encouraging to me, as we go forward. I like to say people don't know what they don't know. And, so we're there to answer those questions. If they've got comments and concerns, I want to make sure we address them and that they understand. September 26th is the community workshop. There's a big press, obviously, to get people involved with that. We've got a whole team of outside professionals working with us on that. We will be providing childcare with assistance from Bridgewater State. We will feed people because we know that's important. On September 15th, the Friday, a week and a half before, the Metro South Chamber is holding their monthly meeting at Old Scotland Links. I'll do a presentation on vision to reality. There'll be a panel discussion with Michael Lambert from BAT, Michael Dutton from the town, and Fred Clark from BSU. So again, another opportunity to get our story out there. We have the dedicated website now. We have a dedicated YouTube channel. Just posted tonight kind of why are we doing this? It was an interview with me and then also have some excerpts from Michael. We expect Channel 6 Providence to be in touch with us in the next week or two to do a presentation or story, I should say. We've got a press release out nationally in terms of what we're doing. So I think we're checking as many boxes as we can. We worked together with Michael to put a letter together for the governor and lieutenant governor, copied the federal delegation, the state delegation, inviting them to come to Bridgewater to understand what we're doing, because I still maintain the position there's not a community in this country that's doing something as holistic as what we're doing, and more people should know about it. So, I mean, I think in terms of assistance from the council, I mentioned this to Fred, I mentioned it to Mark, I'm happy to go meet with smaller groups of your neighborhoods or your constituents that may not have the ability to come to a different, another meeting, just to talk about, just have a conversation about what this is. And, to answer questions, alleviate concerns. We're hoping to get before the Lions Club. We'll go anywhere. I mean, we've got, as I said, the rack cards are in a lot of places. The posters are going up. There's a QR code. I'm really looking forward to the workshop on August 22nd, which is the town council, the planning board, ZBA. I've asked Hillary Fagan, who was the former president of Rhode Island Commerce Corporation, which is the state's economic development agency. She's now with CB Richard Ellis, and then Jamie Bratt, who is a business line leader at Fuss and O'Neill, just to talk about what market trends there are, what the cost of construction is right now, why housing is important to quality retail and restaurants. A lot of the things that I've been talking about, but maybe I need somebody else to validate that. And I think that, they are two really interesting individuals that have both had experience in both the public sector and the private sector. So as do I. So I like to think that we all chew gum and walk at the same time. But I think it's going to be helpful for those members of these boards and commissions that don't totally understand why we're doing what we're doing. We had the kickoff yesterday with Horsley Witten Group in terms of walking downtown, walking Campus Plaza, walking to the campus for the zoning amendments and drafting the form-based code. So we have a lot of balls in the air. I want to say all systems are go. As long as I can keep caffeine in my system, I am good to go. So hopefully that gives you an overview of where we are. I'm obviously more than happy to answer any questions or respond to any comments that you might have heard or have, or suggestions.
What are, I'd actually really love to hear about feedback from our small business community. Are there any common questions and themes that are coming up with them? Some of the feedback you've been hearing directly?
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting because we've talked to, I think we've been to, had one-on-ones with about 12 local businesses, some new, some have been here for 20 years, some have been here for 5 years. I would say that those that are 5 years and less are optimistic that things downtown are going to change. We've met a couple of times with the owner of the Greyhound Tavern. He's looking to not just expand that, but he would like to open another business in town. Businesses that have been here for 20 years plus, they've seen the business environment change. And so they're encouraged to see that the town has taken initiative to improve things. I mean, clearly, if you're on Upper Broad Street, everyone's looking at the Pascal property and wondering what's happening there. I think that people are encouraged to see that things could change at Campus Plaza. And I would say there's not a negative perception. I mean, there's definitely a frustration that people feel like things haven't happened, but there's a sense of, okay, is something really going to happen? And we need to make that happen. So presently before the planning board, we have the Perkins Foundry proposal. That started well before I joined the town. They were 2.5 years into it before I got here. I tried to pump the brakes on that a little bit, but I want to be respectful of the fact that they've invested a lot of money in that and people kind of let them run with it. But they have agreed to reorientate the two front buildings to relate more to the street with larger patios. I mean, I think both of those could be excellent restaurant or coffee shop spaces. They would have residential above there. I think it's important that we show some progress. The fact that we've met with the MBTA has agreed that they would not stand in the way of us relocating the platform is huge. So, I mean, we're making a lot. I mean, as I said, we have a lot of balls in the air. I think that, right now it's, can you guys really pull this off? And, and that's the challenge. And I, for one, do not like failure.
That is great to hear the MBTA is on board with that move. Is BSU on board?
Yeah, we met with BSU before we even talked to the MBTA.
Right.
So, I mean, as now, I mean, the MBTA is not willing to pay for the relocation. We didn't anticipate that, but BSU will, in essence, what will happen is they'll flip those parking lots back again. So BSU will get control of the parking lot by the current platform, and then MBTA will take back the Spring Street lot. So, looking forward, part of the conversation with the MBTA is looking at Mansfield. They have kind of a public partnership with the town there. The MBTA maintains the platform, the town takes care of everything else. If we're successful in how the Foundry and Campus Plaza and Pascal's property comes together, I think in that lower Broad Street area, we'd have the ability to create a business improvement district that could potentially fund the maintenance and plowing and trash removal at the platform. So, I mean, the stars are aligning, but I mean, again, this is a 5-10 year process, but I think, as I posted today, I've been here 7 months and 3 weeks, and vision to reality didn't even exist when I started. And so where it is now and the kind of attention that we're getting, and I think we're creating excitement, is exciting. I mean, and there are challenges that people don't understand. I had concerns coming in what the town's infrastructure capacity was. Frankly, I was told there wasn't any issues. Honestly, there are issues, but I mean, we're addressing those. We've initiated conversations with the Department of Corrections, potentially about redirecting wastewater from the university and perhaps some other neighborhoods to their wastewater plant because it's underutilized. That's going to require some state and federal money, but that's an option. Access to potable drinking water is definitely an issue, but in talking with Michael, I think we've initiated conversations with DEP to see if we can access some of the other wells. So those are all things that, capacity studies is always something that I look at when I look at development, and we're not a blind eye to that because that's what the development community is asking about too. But, we're looking at all of those things. I mean, I always say it's not one tile, it's a big mosaic. I mean, so the interrelationship of all of these things, I think, is what makes Bridgewater unique, because I don't think that's typical government thinking. So that's my very long answer to your short question.
Well, Bob, if I can just offer, it seems to me that the branding that's already in place is terrific. I think that it really focuses on the heart of this initiative. I think it's immediately recognizable by people, and I think it's going to help to, as it were, tie together kind of loose ends, so that people see that holistic idea that you spoke about, and see that it really is all interdependent. So I think that's very helpful and very good. I think that for a lot of people in town, maybe more so the residents who are long-term residents, the Bridgewater natives too, sometimes, I guess, is that there's a great deal of enthusiasm even among that group, but I think that it's more a triumph of what's the expression, a triumph of hope over experience, because past efforts really have been subject to a lot of fits and starts, and there hasn't been a tremendous momentum that's been gathered for any projects in the past. They've been very singular things, and some haven't gotten off the drawing board at all, as you well know. But I think that, quite honestly, the efforts thus far have been very positive, and the enthusiasm is there. So that's more than half the battle, right, at this point.
Yeah, no, and I think, Fred, again, I reflect back to the conversation at the senior center, when we talked about affordable housing and what that means. I think that was an education for people that, if you're a teacher or you're a first year police officer in town, by HUD standards, you're considered affordable housing. And, I know that people have stereotypes about what that is, but I think we were very patient in explaining it to them that, that made some sense to them, that, we were able to say that, yes, we're going to create new housing, but we're going to make sure that we have provisions within zoning and the form-based code that makes mixed income housing available in any of that new housing. So those conversations are important, because I don't want people walking away from that, they're just going to build all this housing and no one's going to be able to afford to live there. And we have a plan to address that. We need to address that. And the best way to do that is just to have these conversations, whether it's 10 people, 20 people, 30 people, one person. And yeah, I think that there is some well-deserved skepticism. I mean, there's been some really great planning that's been done over the last 15 years in Bridgewater. And I make that comment in one of the videos. We need to execute. So is, the Perkins Foundry exactly what I would want if that had come in while I just got here? No, but the fact that we can get those two front buildings to be aligned the way that we would like other buildings, I think that's a positive, and that's something that can happen in the short term. And I think, I appreciate the developers showing a willingness to say, okay, we're gonna spend a little extra money and redesign these buildings. But, and, again, it's a process. I mean, and I don't want to set false expectations that this is all gonna happen next year. It's not, it's a process. And we're fortunate that, we've been working with Fuss and O'Neill, and 20 years ago, approximately, when initially the train platform was going to be in the Spring Street lot, Fuss and O'Neill had done all the engineering on that, and we now have access to those plans. So, again, sometimes the stars align a little bit for us, but it's the Pied Piper. I mean, we just need to, have somebody tell a friend who's going to tell a friend that's going to tell a friend that this is really happening. And I appreciate your comments that, we put a lot of thought into what the branding should be, and, make it simple, but make it understandable. And I think we're doing that. I mean, I know that, there are probably some of your colleagues on the council that may not necessarily have a full glass of the Kool-Aid yet, but we have some on the side. We're ready to pour more.
Good idea.
So Bob, I have one question for you. I forgot to bring this up yesterday when we talked, and you just brought up the wells again. Are those only not up because of the water quota that you could take out daily, or?
Yeah, that the withdrawal permit, Brad, is set by DEP. So in order to, exceed that, we would need to get them to sign off on that.
Right. Thank you.
Bob, I attended remotely the planning board meeting. Seems like it's just a couple of nights ago. And the one item on their agenda was the storage warehouse, which only some short period of time prior did I become really aware of. And it seems to me that that's, maybe not the ideal project, but it seems to me like a very good placement, frankly, which would involve raising the old structure, which was, I think, part of the shoe factory, was it not?
That's correct.
And then actually creating really a state-of-the-art storage facility. So I feel good about that. And I don't know, do you think that might be something that actually might get off the blocks first?
I do. I mean, a couple of things about that project. I mean, that, initially, and this happened before I got here, initially, they came before the planning board and it got approved. They're going to rehab that space. And then as they got into it, they realized that the existing environmental conditions and the structure of the building were cost prohibitive. So they came back and to the zoning board and said, we're going to raise the building and put something new up. Is that the highest and best use? Probably not, but I mean, again, they were already in the queue. That's a tight site. It's got issues in terms of encroaching on MBTA property. Storm drainage is a problem. You weren't ever going to do a lot of housing there because there's no parking. It's a really tight lot. But I think the advantage to the town is that if we don't allow that project to go forward and there's a fire or some other incident there, the environmental cleanup is going to be on the town, and that's going to be a huge expense. So the other thing that helps me with that project is that there are some members of the planning board that feel the apartment building behind the two buildings at the Perkins site are too high. And that building, self-storage, is actually at a higher elevation to begin, and it would be the same height as that apartment building. So, in terms of perspective, I think it helps us say, really? And they've been a good developer. They've been respectful. They've listened. I mean, that site is not doing anything positive for the town now, that's for sure. And it was too small to be a housing site. I mean, I know some people have brought it up, but there was no way we were gonna ever be able to park that site and, still get any kind of economic return. And that, again, I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to have the workshop, is that seldom do municipalities talk about the economics of development, because it's complicated, but if the economics don't work, development doesn't work. And it's okay for developers to make money, because quite frankly, I don't want developers coming into town that don't want to make money, because I'll be left with a failed project in an unfinished building. But, so I think it's going to be helpful for, some of your colleagues to just understand what development economics are in this environment. They're impacted by the supply chain, the land cost, that you can't have good retail, good restaurants without housing. I think some of the transportation initiatives that we're looking at, the MBTA Advisory Committee will rue the day last week that they voted me on to their commuter rail committee. But I think that, we have a story to tell, and that, the way we look at transportation, it's not all rail centric. That, we've had conversations with Brockton Area Transit on intermodal transit, on micro transit. I talked to the university as they kind of reinvent how they operate. And Susie, this, there are more and more international students there. As you all know, we don't have a lot of ethnic markets in Bridgewater, but in Brockton they do. So, giving those students an opportunity to have transportation to get to some of these things is important. And that doesn't have to be a big bus. It could be a van. So, we have all those conversations going on, and, fortunately, there's money available at the federal level and state level to fund some of these things. So, it's really just getting everyone in the same room. I've always been a big proponent of thinking regionally, because I think that's just the world we live in. I know that some of your colleagues, don't necessarily like Brockton, but if Brockton succeeds, Bridgewater succeeds. Some of our success will bleed into Brockton, but they're doing a decent job trying to reinvent themselves. They're a different environment, but they're Middleborough is doing nothing. Lakeville is doing nothing. And, so eventually we might want to be friends with Brockton, because we might want to access their water supply. So I don't, I want to be able to have those cross town line conversations. And, the fact that we're bringing Metro South Chamber to Bridgewater, we might as well be taking them to Florida, because they've never been this far south.
Bob, I just as a comment, I have to say, I love this line of thinking about leveraging what is available, where we can make progress with other cities and towns. You're absolutely right. It's not just, in this council, there's definitely been a sentiment, I think, across a lot of citizens around, Brockton being looked at somewhat negatively. And it's really unfortunate, because it does not need to be that way. And I agree. I think Brockton has been working really hard. I know they've got their challenges, but they've been working really hard to try and address some significant infrastructure issues. So
I will share this with you, and I think some of you might know this already. So I did a presentation, maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago, to the board of directors for the Metro South Chamber, and went through my whole presentation. Like, do we hire you? No, you can't, but I can tell you some of the things you need to do.
yeah, no poaching allowed.
No poaching allowed. But I think they're downtown. They've made some really good improvements. As you come into town, they have similar situations to Campus Plaza. They've got a lot of vacant one-story park in the front, empty, retail space. I made the comment to that group. I said, coming in and I'm following the bus, and the bus turned into, I think, what used to be a Kmart. There wasn't even a store open in there.
Right? It's wild. Yeah, I know exactly where you're
That's
talking
gotta be
about.
very depressing for that bus driver.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, one thing, Bob, I as you know, we don't have really any longer any daily area newspaper, because the Brockton Enterprise would need a roadmap to find us.
Sure.
And, it's unfortunate that, the one independent source, the Independent, is no longer around, and that at least was sufficed as a small town newspaper. I don't know if there's any, likely success in kind of reaching out to the Enterprise. They have on occasion had, reporters who were more or less assigned to cover, among other towns, Bridgewater. And I just don't think that they even give lip service to that any longer.
I think you're correct, Fred. So, our initial press release was targeted at all the Boston stations, the Providence stations, the public radio stations. I mean, we anticipate that we're going to do something with WGBH on their noontime show. What we've talked about, and I think we're going to kick off next week, as we've done the senior center, we've done the meeting with the Bridgewater Business Association, which I should have brought up earlier, Susie, which was really well attended as well. Young crowd, very positive, excited. So we're putting these mailing lists together using MailChimp and some other software. We're going to start a weekly newsletter, just pushing it out to everyone in terms of what's going on, what we're doing. It's not going to be the newspaper, but I mean, it's the best that, we can do now. And our next push with these press releases is to reach out, past the Boston Globe to the New York Times, to other publications, because again, in terms of smart growth, smart development, community initiatives, I don't know anyone else that's doing this. And I'm not saying that for my purposes, because I'm only one cog in this wheel. But, I'm incredibly grateful that I've been given the opportunity to lead this effort, but it's not just me. I mean, I've got a lot of help, and, Michael and Kimberly are giving me wide latitude. The council has given me wide latitude. I always wake up wondering when that's going to end. But I think that I want the community to be excited, because I truly believe a large percentage of the community doesn't even know anything that's going on.
Oh, absolutely.
And I mean, I shared this with the seniors that in April, the average home resale value in Bridgewater was $550,000.
Mhm.
That exceeds what the average for the entire state of Rhode Island was. And, that's kind of scary that, we have that kind of wealth in town, but they have nowhere to spend that money. And, again, looking at what the cyber program can be at BSU, that's our biotech. That's how I'm classifying that, because that's jobs, that's opportunity. Those are people that are going to live in these houses. It's a white collar job. Joint Base Cape Cod, their cyber program has been shut down, probably won't be reopened. So I think, the university has an opportunity, and I'm encouraged in the time that I've been here that I think our relationship with the university is much stronger than it was 8 months ago. We're going to be very involved this fall with their Masters of Public Administration program. We're working with some of their faculty on doing community surveys leading up to the workshop. They have all the tools to do that. We are working with the university. We just added a new staff person in my office, Srishti Jain. She's a GIS expert. We're working with the school university on combining their GIS capacities so we can have ours internally. So I'm very excited about that relationship. I know that, Fred Clark is going to speak before the workshop on the 22nd. So I think things are going in the right direction.
Yeah.
I'm such an impatient person that they're never going to go fast enough for me. But
And I would just, reiterate, and I know, information does get shared with us, but anything that you can help provide to us, as a toolkit around communication, please do so, because, as you mentioned before, just trying to get folks to sign up for the email newsletter. I mean, we can help be those amplifiers of those messages, right? In terms of like, okay, go to the website, sign up, or like, here's on Facebook, here's the sign up link. I think even when we had our first workshop with you, I had brought up around like continually giving us talking points at each stage of like, what are some of those messages to get across? Because I do agree, 28,000 or 29,000 residents here, I would say the vast majority have no idea that anything is in the works. And even with our limited circle of 9 people, we're not going to reach all 28,000 either necessarily, but to your point around like one person tells another person, tells another person, tells another person. I think y'all have been doing a great job in terms of, building the website, the marketing tools, the Facebook presence. But the fact is there's still a lot of folks who are disengaged with those channels already. So like I said, if we can help amplify, please do.
Yeah, and without wearing out my welcome with Deb, I mean, I've been trying to once a week to push out to you all, but just going to the coffee shop. Nicole and I walked over there on Friday. I'm like, you got to get back over here because we only had like 2 cards left in the rack card. So people are picking things up, and we're starting. We look at the analytics for the Facebook page for my office, which was anemic before this effort started, and every week it's positive. We're getting more followers, more engagements. I only use LinkedIn to push out what I do professionally. I mean, week over week, I'm up 200, 300% in terms of engagement. So, and I'm still learning how to do social media. I mean, by the time I get to be an adult, I'll understand it, but, it's working. So, I think when people understand what's going on, they're going to be excited. I shared with Fred that his neighbor, Dan Greenberg, is on the ZBA. Dan and his wife just had a baby over the 4th of July weekend. Young couple, excited. Dan's in the construction business. They love what we're talking about. That's why they moved here, because they thought it was already here. But those are those are the kind of people that those are our ambassadors, right? And I don't have all the answers. I mean, my plan isn't the only plan. I'm just trying to stimulate conversation and get input and get explain to people. But the more we do that, the better off we're going to be, and we're going to have a much better plan. And when I do renderings, Campus Palace, doesn't mean it's going to look exactly like that. I'm just trying to give people perspective that it could look better than it does now. And it's fun. I mean, this is, I think I told Fred and Eric this early on. I mean, for me, this is not a job. This is a passion. I mean, this is what I enjoy doing. I don't paint, I don't draw, I don't sing, I don't dance. This is what I do. And this is what I love to do. And I'm excited to see that it's moving. Again, when you look at where we were on January 9th, when I started, to where we are now, I dare you to find anybody that's moved that fast. And that's not me. It's because I've been allowed the ability to be me.
Bob, my son was visiting over the weekend. We were talking, and he, by the way, he does work in cybersecurity, and I've made him in recent months aware of what is happening at Bridgewater State, and he was, it really piqued his curiosity about it a lot. He thought that was a fabulous niche that might work out very well for the school and for the town.
Right.
And but just in conjunction with that, he has some friends, basically in some cases high school friends, even college friends. But he has a friend who had worked with my son at Sasaki, of the architects in Boston for some time, and he has now relocated to Bridgewater, as has another friend of my son who actually worked with him, or I should say, who worked at the Draper Labs. And you know, we've got some really talented, professional young people in town that many of us don't even know.
Yeah.
And you're exactly right when you speak about, for example, Dan Greenberg. There are people who are catching wind of what we're talking about tonight, and it's really sparking a lot of enthusiasm. It's slow to spread far, but it is definitely beginning to spread, and I think that that's only going to bode well for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I use the example that Thrifty, who are our new employee, her and her husband, she's just got her master's. Her husband works for a business in Rhode Island. They found 2 apartments that were available for young professional people that are making decent money. So they are renting a 2nd floor apartment on Bedford Street for $2,000 a month, with college students and landscapers on the 1st floor, and they have to pay for parking. I mean, that just speaks to, that's a whole demographic that we do not have housing for right now, because they wanted to be close to downtown. They wanted to walk. So that's a real story.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Bob, I kind of follow the website Strong Towns.
Yeah.
And I've always found them to have some really insightful planning and other town related matters, and it's kind of sparked my interest. And more often than not now, more recently, when I read what they post or what they present online, I can almost hear your words echoing because I hear some of the same things, and they talk about parking, for example. They talk a lot about that, and
Yeah.
Eliminating parking minimums and things of that sort. And I think to myself, well, this could be Bob Ruley right here. I'd love to think that at some point, if we have a particular benchmark that we could make them aware of, it might be something that could be highlighted in a sense.
Yeah, so I've asked, we have Andrew McHugh is a public relations consultant that we're working with. I've shared with her Strong Towns because I follow them too, Fred. My head exploded 2 weeks ago because they were doing a podcast with a guy from California talking about Rhode Island housing zoning. And I'm like, okay, I should have wrote my book like 5 years ago, because they're saying the same things. I'm not saying I invented this, but this is where we're at right now. And I probably am going to write a book when I'm done with this, because we're not just talking about it, we're doing it. But yeah, it's, I reposted something yesterday on parking. It's like, when people say we have a parking problem, no, it's a parking management problem. Yesterday afternoon, I had Horsley Witten Group here. We walked by the Walgreens lot at 2:30. There might have been 10 cars in there. I understand that the students aren't here right now, but that's just a bad excuse for like why we shouldn't have shared parking. So we have to rethink that. Shared parking is a concept now. And, I think that we've got to talk to business owners, about when someone, I mentioned that, employees park in front of Restoration Coffee because they work there. Well, that's not a good thing. Or the owner parks there. That's not a good thing. You just took like 5 parking spaces away, but we want people to park in one place and walk around. Central Square is a challenge right now, and we're getting ready for the next CDBG funding round early next year. I will put in for facade improvement money, even though it pains me, because we're going to be giving money to people that wouldn't have done anything unless we gave them free money. But we have to do something with those buildings.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, Angelo needs to do something with his space. If we could get 2 restaurants on Central Square, things would change immediately.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
And Angelo's property and the property right next to Old Town Hall, where the real estate agent is now, she would gladly give up that space if a restaurant could go in there. And, you know, it's changing our zoning to allow that. But all the things we're talking about, those would be two fabulous locations on either side of Central Square that would bring such vitality to that area, and all the boats would lift with the tide.
I agree. I agree. Let's talk to Angela.
You know, I've been in the time I've been here, I've never spoken to him. I mean, I've had many conversations with Senator Timmelty, had conversations with Congressman Keating's office, Senator Markey's office, Senator Warren's office, and we've had a difficult time even making contact with the governor's office, you know, which is very surprising. You know, when I was, you know, Rhode Island's a small state, I get that, but I mean, I had speed dial for chief of staff for our 2 US senators and congressmen, had many meetings with Governor Raimondo and Governor McKee, with the lieutenant governors. I mean, I just, you know, I'm a student of politics and I'll never run for political office, but we're checking off so many more boxes than any other community is in terms of the things we're doing. I would think if I was a politician, I'd want to have my picture being taken where we're doing all these things.
There'll be critical mass. There will be. You know, it's funny, just because you mentioned basically not having a good contact in the governor's office. And I think that, you know, the council before you arrived needed to implement various charter changes with respect to the composition of the council and our precincts, our voting precincts. And, you know, we received either, depending on the day, no information or absolutely bad information on a day-by-day basis as to whether or not the governor had yet signed into law those amendments. And it was extremely frustrating, and we were under the gun, and we just had to know something. But I know I said to Michael, in effect, I mean, we can't have a liaison with somebody in the executive suite to simply tell us, you know, it's on his desk, or he's actually signed it, or now she. I'll see what I can do with the convention coming up in September.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Michael participated in a meeting on Thursday of last week with Ed Augustus, who used to be the mayor of Worcester. He is the new housing secretary in the renamed Office of Housing and Livable Communities, which is crazy. And I've been in contact with his staff people over the last 2 days. I'm like, look, if you guys want to be heroes, like, come here, okay? Because, you know, I shared with them, I said, you know, I testified before the Rhode Island legislature in December 2021 on housing, and all of the initiatives I put forth were just adopted this spring. So if you want to know how to do it, come here, no charge.
Good.
Bob, was it it was the Wymans that bought Burger King, right?
What's that?
Was it the Wymans that bought the Burger King right on Broad Street?
I don't know that, Brad.
I want to know what the
We
lease
can
is
look
on that
into it. I
Burger
don't-
King. That'd be a nice place for a restaurant too, right there.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with like franchise restaurants like that, they tend to tie themselves into extremely
For a while.
long leases.
Yeah.
Just
Oh, yeah.
because of the, you know, the capital investment they have to make, not just in the space, but the royalties that they have to pay back to whatever the parent company of Burger King is. I used to know what it is, but you know, I think, you know, again, I'm more encouraged that Nick, who owns Greyhound, he has a restaurant in Quincy. If he likes it, I mean,
He does well.
He
Oh,
did
yeah.
well through COVID. I mean, he's got a clean spot. He leases that patio from the property owner next door. I mean, he's very anxious to open another restaurant. And I think that, you know, if something can go at the Perkins site, he'd probably be one of the people in there, and that would be awesome. You know, the way they've reconfigured the buildings to have a patio that looks out on the streets, it's not gonna be right on the street, but it's progress. I mean, it's clearly better than what's there.
Oh, 100%. Like, you know, I've been in there a million times. That place, it's going to be good to see that place gone.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know the people that own Crispins or Krispies, but when the sign says you're only open Thursday to Saturday, not very encouraging.
Sure.
That's really there.
All right. Any final questions?
None from me.
I don't believe so.
So we'll keep you in the information loop. I mean, as I said, I think my number one request would be if you have anybody that is interested in learning about this, I don't care if it's 2 people, 3 people, or 33 people, I will make myself available.
That's great. Well, thank you, Bob, for your willingness to do that. We'll
I
try to
haven't
put
told
something
my wife
together.
about it yet, but I'm willing to do it.
All right. Well, I appreciate the discussion. Bob, thank you so much for giving
No,
up
thank-
time
I-
tonight as well.
You know,
So,
I'm thankful to each of you for the opportunity. And Brad, is good about stopping in my office on a periodic basis, and we can talk. Susie, I know your schedule is crazy, but Fred is one of my best friends on LinkedIn now. I mean, it's like scaring me. But I mean, that he was at, both he and Mark were at the senior event, and I was happy that they got to see our interaction with the community, but the residents, I mean, that was a positive experience. And Fred, I don't know, maybe you disagree, but I thought it was a really positive experience.
Oh, no, I absolutely agree. I mean, I mean, first of all, as you pointed out, the turnout was great. I thought the questions were, perfectly appropriate and probably reflective of the entire community at large. And I thought that the information you provided and I thought that was really on point. So to me, that was a very successful discussion.
Yeah, I agreed.
Great.
I enjoyed it.
yeah, let us, let me know, like or let us know, right? Some of the other events coming up. I know it can be challenging working full-time and just, making those schedules work. But if there is an opportunity to show up and support you, Bob,
Yeah, so you keep looking at the website. I think we're adding Eventbrite. So, just as
Oh, okay.
people to, see what's going on. We'll have some, I know we have something scheduled at Black Hat Brewery in the next couple of weeks for small business outreach on a Wednesday. As I said, Michael and I will be doing something at the library. Michael's asked me to set up a virtual meeting. So I have to talk to my booking agent in terms of exactly what I have going on, but, and then again, if there are groups that we don't know about,
Yeah,
make ourselves available.
okay. Awesome.
And I appreciate all of your support. I mean, I think that, I know that there are probably some members on the council that aren't necessarily entirely on board, but I have a sense that you 3 have been consistent in your support, and I appreciate that. My staff appreciates that, and use us as a resource, please.
Very good. Shall
I
do.
learned a lot from you, Bob. That's for sure. I can tell you that. The 5-minute conversations that turn into 30 are always good.
Well, I mean, we have a joke that, these aren't TED Talks, these are Bob Talks.
Yeah, they are. That they are.
I like that.
That's good.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Yeah,
good
thanks
Thank you.
again. Well,
Thank you,
I think
Bob.
I have to, so we don't have any further business. Thanks again, Bob. Thanks to my fellow counselors. So I will entertain a
Make
motion
a
to
motion.
adjourn.
I'll second it.
Does a second? Okay.
Do we have to do a roll call?
Um,
Might as well, right? Do it right way.
The formality of it all.
Looks unanimous to me.
Yeah,
All right.
all right.
I would
Well,
like
have
to
a good night,
stay
everybody.
longer.
Bye,
Thank you. Good
everybody.
Good
night.
week, guys.
Thanks, Deb.
Good night, all.
Thank you,
Bye.
Deb.